Heute geht's wieder los. Wir trinken Whisky. Herzlich willkommen zu unserem monatlichen Whisky-Talk.
Hier kann ich tatsächlich immer zusagen, der ist für mich immer lecker, ist irgendwie ein bisschen beständiger.
Man merkt, ich kriege überhaupt nichts hin hier heute, aber ich habe auch schon am Bier gelippt.
Das hat das Schöne bei solchen Brennereien, genau, die haben so ein Alleinstellungsmerkmal, was wir immer überall rausstellen.
Wir haben hier mindestens einen 12 Jahre alten Whisky und einen 4 Jahre alten.
Alle denken immer so, sie müssten schottischen Whisky erstmal trinken. Das ist Quatsch, es gibt so viele gute Whisky-Brennereien überall. Die gefallen mir ganz gut. Hallo und herzlich willkommen zurück zu einer neuen Episode vom Heimathaven Whisky Talk mit diesem Sascha, das bin ja ich, und dem anderen Vogel, der auch immer dabei ist, diesem Daniel, der boxt sich schon wieder warm. Ich zeige euch das mal da. Er macht sich warm, der ist so heiß, der Junge, der hat Bock, der hat den ganzen Tag trainiert, nur um euch heute was erzählen zu können über Whisky. Herzlich willkommen, Daniel.
Moin.
Und der hat schon direkt eine Flasche in der Hand. Oh Mann.
Ja, hallo zusammen. Voll geil, endlich wieder hier zu sein. Hi Sascha, schön, dass ich dabei sein darf.
Wunderbar.
Ich bin aufgeregt ohne Ende. Was für ein Tag.
Das
und dann zum Abschluss noch sowas hier. Ihr habt alle zu Hause, die das Tasting-Set bestellt haben, diese geniale Flasche bekommen?
Dir kann keiner antworten.
Achso.
Du kriegst keine Antwort. Das wird nicht passieren.
Schade. Nein, voll geil. Also ich finde es großartig, dass sie es wirklich geschafft haben, die Miniatur in klein genauso aussehen zu lassen wie die große Flasche. Finde ich geil. Also das alleine ist es schon wert, sich das anzugucken. Finde ich richtig, richtig cool. Was soll ich sagen? Mega. Das ist cool. Und ich freue mich auch tierisch, dass diese Distille heute dran ist. Raasay von der Isle of Raasay. Das ist einfach extrem großartiger Stoff.
Ja, genau. Und ich sehe gerade, unser heutiger Gast ist auch schon da, hat sich gerade dazu geschaltet. Da müssen wir gleich mal wieder auf Englisch rüber switchen, weil wir haben heute Chiara Hepburn zu Gast von der Isle of Raasay Distillery, die uns quasi den Deep Dive geben wird in die Brennerei. Das wird richtig los. Und da wünsche ich mir jetzt ganz, ganz viel Applaus und tausende Kommentare von euch und ganz viel Moin, Moin, Moin und Hallo für Chiara. Welcome.
Welcome.
Hello.
Nice
Hi.
to have you here.
Hi.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
Nice
How
to
are
meet
you
you too.
today?
Yes, good. I am unfortunately not on the Isle of Raasay as we speak, although I am in Scotland, which is sometimes a rare occasion. I am in Edinburgh at the minute in our, don't want to say HQ, but we very much have a home here in Edinburgh to showcase Isle of Raasay. So we have a small team that are based in Edinburgh, but the bulk of our team and really the main cog in what we do is based on the Isle of Raasay. Although I should say, if I was based on Raasay, the Wi-Fi probably wouldn't be as good as it is right now.
Okay. Did you have your office there last year too? Because I went to Edinburgh last year and nobody told me about you.
Yeah, our office is kind of, to be honest, it's generally just 5 of us here. As you may know, we do everything on site on the island. So we have about a team of 35 based at the distillery versus just a small 5 here in Edinburgh. So really the bulk of what we do is done on the island by local people. And for those of you that don't know, the Isle of Raasay is based in a pretty remote part of Scotland. The Inner Hebrides, if anyone's familiar with the Hebridean Islands. The Isle of Raasay is nestled in between the mainland and the Isle of Skye. I'm sure some of you that have been to Scotland, those of you that haven't will probably have heard of the Isle of Skye. Isle of Raasay sits just northeast of the Isle of Skye. And actually we're about 11 miles from Talisker Distillery. So that is our closest distillery. 11 miles as the crow flies, of course. About 2 hours to get there by car.
Okay, so we will see a short video in a second. So we have 2 videos today just from your importer Kirsch. And I think we start with one. But before that, I want to say hello to our German to our German audience. I have to translate a little bit today. Sorry, because not everyone here is speaking English. So just a second, please. Also, Chiara ist von der Isle of Raasay Distillery, ist heute aus Edinburgh, oder wie wir in Deutschland sagen, Edinburgh, zugeschaltet und wird uns eine Menge heute über die Brennerei erzählen, uns ein bisschen was erklären. Ich muss gestehen, ich habe auch ein bisschen Probleme mit dem Akzent. Ich hoffe, ihr verzeiht mir, wenn wir nicht auf alles eingehen. Ich komme manchmal nicht so ganz mit. Es ist echt so ein bisschen
ein bisschen bayerisch.
Bayerisch im Deutschen vielleicht so, wenn man aus einem anderen Land kommt, ist das etwas schwerer. Aber wir kriegen das alle zusammen hin und genau. Wenn ihr Fragen habt, kommentiert wie gewohnt. Allen, die da jetzt gerade zu Hause sitzen, auf jeden Fall nochmal ein fettes Hallo von Daniel, mir und Chiara. Und genau, ich würde sagen, wir schauen uns erstmal ein Video an, wie es da aussieht. Und danach erkläre ich euch, was wir heute vorhaben. Wir haben ja 5 kleine Flaschen verschickt, eine sogar ein bisschen größer diesmal. Und hier gehen wir jetzt mal los und fliegen über die Brennerei. Viel Spaß! So, ein erster kleiner Eindruck von der Brennerei. Und damit ihr euch noch mal ganz kurz hier einen Überblick machen könnt, wo sind wir eigentlich? Hier habe ich das mal eben hier bei unseren Freunden von Google Maps mir hier angeschaut. Ihr seht, da ist die Isle of Raasay Distillery. Das heißt, hier ist Isle of Skye, ja, und hier ist die Distillery auf der kleineren Insel hier. Und ich glaube, weiß gar nicht, wie man da rüberkommt. Schwimmen wahrscheinlich. Von hier, ich würde bis hierhin mit dem Auto fahren und dann hier ins Wasser springen und rüber schwimmen. Das ist ja nur so ein kleines Stück. Also das kriegen wir, glaube ich, hin. Und
fährt wohl eine Fähre.
Den ersten Eindruck, da gucken wir uns gleich nochmal was Cooles an, nämlich wie das hier gebaut wurde. Da haben wir so ein Zeitraffer-Video. Da freue ich mich auch schon gleich drauf. Das wird, glaube ich, nochmal ganz schön. So, jetzt muss ich mal gucken. Hier Technik, Dude, Sascha, zack, da sind wir alle drei wieder. Und wie kriege ich jetzt dieses olle Ding weg? Da sind wir wieder. Here we are back. So, Chiara, today we want to have a very special tasting because we have 4 single cask, which are part of the core Isle of Raasay whiskey. And so what's very special for me is that we have a Chinkapink oak cask in 2 versions, because when you go into the Latin name, it's Quercus Mühlenbergi, and my name is Sascha Mühlenbeck, so it sounds completely the same. So it's my own oak, I think. It's a Sascha oak. And really. I'm very looking forward how it tastes, because I tasted it maybe 2 months ago, but I forgot everything. So we have to do it today. We have 4 parts of the 6 parts of the single malt whiskey in cask strength. So it's very, very special and hard tasting, because we will do this 4 at the beginning and the classical single malt after that. So, but maybe you can explain how the single malt of Raasay is made.
Yeah, so I guess really I should start off by talking about the single malt. Otherwise, the things that come before or after it don't really make sense. So the Isle of Raasay single malt really is at the core of everything that we're doing. It's an encapsulation of our distillery, our island, our ethos, our DNA. Sometimes referred to as core single malt, sometimes signature single malt, flagship, whatever you want to call it. That is really at the forefront of what we're doing. It's also sometimes referred to as the Nashia single malt. And if you have the boxes of the single casks in front of you, you'll see they say up the side, Nashia single cask series. Now, all Nashia means is the 6 in Scots Gaelic. And the 6, of course, refers to the Isle of Raasay core single malt recipe. So the Isle of Raasay core single malt, which we'll come on to taste last, did you say?
Yes, we will taste it last.
So the Isle of Raasay core single malt is a recipe of 6 cask types made up of, we're going to taste 2 of the cask types, but 2 spirit types. That's right.
Yeah.
Unpeated and peated red wine,
Yes.
unpeated and peated Chinkapin virgin oak. So I should maybe firstly start off by saying 6 months of the year at the Isle of Raasay Distillery, we produce an unpeated spirit.
Okay.
The other 6 months of the year, we produce a heavily peated spirit. Now, those are matured separately, and then the idea is that they're brought together for bottling to create a lightly peated character. So our overall distillery character is lightly peated with rich dark fruits. And the way that we achieve that is by producing 2 different spirit types and maturing those 2 different spirit types across these 3 cask types.
Okay, Chiara, give me just a second
initially, but we'll bring it all back together. And hopefully it'll
give me just a second to translate it, otherwise I can't remember all what you said. Also, was Chiara gerade erzählt hat, ist, dass sie im Prinzip 6 Monate im Jahr einen nicht torfigen New Make produzieren und die anderen 6 Monate im Jahr eben einen torfigen Single Malt.
Stark torfigen sogar.
Einen stark torfigen, ganz genau. Und der Single Malt besteht insgesamt aus 6 verschiedenen Fasslagerungen. 3 sind nicht torfig und 3 sind eben stark torfig. Genau. Und sie haben 2 verschiedene New Makes und 3 verschiedene Fasstypen in diesem Fall. Da haben wir eben die Grüneiche, wir haben Rye-Fässer und wir haben die Ex-Bourbon-Fässer. Und daraus wird quasi das Single Malt komponiert. Ich bin mir nicht sicher, ob zu gleichen Teilen, das wird sie uns gleich bestimmt noch erzählen. Aber auf jeden Fall wichtig für euch, das Single Malt besteht aus 6 verschiedenen Lagerungen, die quasi sich verdoppeln. Einmal nicht, ich stotter heute, ne? Ich bin am Stottern. Genau. Also, wir haben torfig 3-mal, nicht torfig 3-mal, aber jeweils das gleiche Holz. Das ist die Geschichte dahinter. 3 verschiedene Hölzer, das wird komponiert und daraus ergibt sich quasi die DNA der Insel. Und das finde ich ganz spannend, dass sie das quasi so zusammenbringen. Und das ist ja das, was Daniel und ich seit Jahren predigen. Ein Single Malt ist eben nicht eine Einzelfassabfüllung, ein Fass, sondern wir haben immer eine Komposition von vielen, vielen Fässern. Und hier hat man sich eben auf diese Rezeptur festgelegt. Okay, Chiara, it's your turn again. We have the different kind of spirits, the different kind of cask, and then you put all 6 casks together. But I think it's not the same amount of each cask, so it's a special.
It is not, no, and I probably should mention that when I talk about 6 cask types, there really is only 3 cask types, but because we mature both peated and unpeated, it creates 6 in total. So those 3 cask types are virgin Chinkapin oak, ex-Bordeaux red wine, and ex-American rye casks. So we mature both unpeated in those 3 cask types, and we mature peated spirit in those 3 cask types.
Genau. Oh, ich habe gerade aus Versehen Ex-Bourbon Cask gesagt, Daniel, ne? Es sind die Ex-Bordeaux Red Wine Cask,
Yeah, okay. Not ex-Bourbon, though.
Yeah, sorry. But I said it in my translation, but it was...
sorry. Okay, sure.
Because my eyes are very old.
Yeah.
I read X-B and it's for me bourbon.
Sure. So it is a complex recipe. And I guess really what we set out to do is we wanted to create a single malt with balance, complexity and depth that should and could be enjoyed at a younger age. So I guess, Isle of Raasay started producing spirit in 2017. We were part of this kind of new wave of Scotch whisky or world whisky. Between 2015 and 2020, there was distilleries popping up in Scotland and elsewhere in the world. And I guess we really set out in the initial days to pave our own way, to be innovative, to do something different. And so this recipe is something that's not only very unique in Scotch whisky, but world whisky as well.
Okay. But is the core range getting older over the time?
Uh-huh.
Or is it always a 3-year or to 4-year-old whiskey?
So yeah, it's get asked that question almost daily.
Okay, sorry.
The answer is not so simple. So we have for the last the distillery turned 6 this year. We have been talking about young spirit and why young spirit and why young spirit should be enjoyed at a younger age. You know, we had a blank canvas when we designed the Isle of Raasay Distillery, and we could incorporate different parts of production processes and of course wood policy that would create a young spirit that is not the way that people perceive young spirit to be. You know, a lot of older and really interesting and well-known and well-celebrated distilleries that are known for, you know, some of the best whiskey in the world, they were really built to mature stock for 10, 12, 15, 20, you know, perhaps even longer. Our distillery is very modern in the way that it was designed, and I guess right through to our DNA, our brand DNA. It was never designed to be a distillery that could only be enjoyed at 12 years old, 15 years old, 20 years old. We set out to create a distillery that could...
No worries, Daniel and me, we are the lawyers of the young distilleries. So we share your opinion, and we like young whiskies and the modern distilleries because we know about the new receptors and the importance of using good and fresh casks.
Yeah. But to answer your question, of course, our stock is getting older. And not only that, we of course don't bottle an amount each year that we're producing. So we always are left with a proportion of surplus stock, which will sit on a bit longer. So I guess technically every year the core single malt does incorporate a little bit of older stock each time. But I think it would be you know, our message over the last 5 years is about young whiskey. It would be hypocritical of us to then get to 10 years old, you know, bang an age statement on it, and then Isle of Raasay only talks about 10-year-old whiskey. You know, I think it would be very hypocritical. It wouldn't be in our nature. And I think a big part of our story, our DNA, has been talking about innovation. And I think a big part of that is about celebrating, talking about and educating on younger styles of whiskey. So I hope that even when the distillery is, you know, 20 years down the line, that we are talking about, you know, a 20-year-old Raasay, but we can still be talking about the 3- and 4-year-old spirit, which was really what our distillery started off on and what loads of people know it as.
Okay, thank you. So I think we will start with a tasting with the first whiskey for today. And
Red wine.
Was haben wir gesagt? Welchen Whisky wir zuerst? Red wine. Okay, Ex-Bordeaux Red Wine Cask. So we will start with the unpeated Ex-Bordeaux Red Wine Cask. So für alle euch zu Hause, ne, ihr könnt quasi das Fläschchen öffnen. Wir starten mit diesem hier. Und ihr dürft natürlich wie immer gerne eure Kommentare mit reinschreiben und kommentieren, was das Zeug hält. Seid ein bisschen vorsichtig. Wir haben hier nämlich 61,8 Volumenprozent. Das heißt, wir starten heute wirklich sehr, sehr hoch. Chiara trinkt das Ganze schon aus der großen Flasche. Die kommen mit kleinen Gläsern nicht klar.
Great bottle.
So. Okay. Und wo wir noch gar nicht drüber gesprochen haben, sind natürlich diese wunderschönen Flaschen. Ne? Also ich habe jetzt hier eine offene Flasche natürlich und einen Sticker von meinem Team drauf hier noch. So, weil ich ja immer die kleinen Buchstaben nicht lesen kann. Nein, Quatsch. Aber wenn man diese Flasche sich anschaut, ne, das ist so gelungen. Und ich erinnere mich noch, wir hatten bei uns damals, wir haben es gerade noch gesehen, Daniel, das Inaugural Release bei uns im Shop damals für 199 €. Und wir haben gerade darüber gesprochen, Daniel glaubt, er hat es einfach ausgetrunken, ohne irgendwie drüber nachzudenken. So, ach so, das war das Inaugural Release? Schade. So, kostet jetzt wahrscheinlich ein bisschen mehr. Und als dann der erste Single Malt in der Flasche kam, eine Core Release, war es die gleiche Flasche. Und ich dachte, sie nehmen es wirklich nur für den Inaugural Release. Aber sie haben es einfach durchgezogen, das Ding. Richtig cool, also eine hochwertige Flasche, wo man so einen fossilen Abdruck von der Insel, von den Felsen gemacht hat.
Ja, sehr
also wirklich großartig. Chiara, I was just talking about, I always thought in the first, when we had the inaugural release, that the bottle is only for the inaugural release. And then the core range came out and I said, okay, it's the same bottle, crazy. Because it's the most beautiful bottle in the whiskey world, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really kind of you to say. And I guess just going back to what I spoke about at the start, the people on the island being a big part of what we're doing. We're employing 35 people out of an island population of 161.
Okay.
Now that sort of ethos runs a bit deeper than just employing as many local people as possible. Really, you showed the island on the maps in a very remote part of Scotland, a very unique part of Scotland as well. And the island itself is really at our biggest asset as a company, as a distillery. And it always has to be the focal point of what we're doing. Now, the bottle is very much just that. The bottle is an encapsulation of the island. In actual fact, it is a representation of the island's landscape, its rugged nature. Now, when the bottle was being designed, back right in the midst of lockdown, it was a colleague of mine who actually took a clay mould around the island. He indented parts of the landscape into the clay, so parts of rocks, foliage, the rugged nature of the exposed island. Of course, just being off the coast of Skye, Raasay was a volcanic island. The bottle is an encapsulation of the landscape. And, we take Raasay all over the world. Just in March, our team was in New Zealand, Australia, Tasmania, the US, Switzerland, Taiwan, Korea. And there's people all over the world that will never get to visit that really remote part of Scotland. No. But having the bottle in your hand is having a little piece of the island and the landscape with you. So that was really where the bottle design came from.
Great story.
Absolutely. Okay. So, Daniel, du als unser Supernase, würde ich sagen, du stürzt dich mal drauf.
Daniel the Nose, yes.
Genau. Und erzählst uns mal, was du da Schönes riechst.
Dark Fruits.
Yeah, so you remember I spoke about that distillery character, lightly peated with rich dark fruits. Of course, we're starting with the unpeated, so hopefully you're not getting any of the lightly peated character, but what you should be getting in the red wine is that dark fruit flavour. And what the red wine casks bring is the dark fruit flavour profile to our core single malt. So red wine is a very important component of the Isle of Raasay single malt. And it actually makes up the smallest proportion of the core single malt in the way that the recipe is divided up. And that is really because that dark fruit flavour we're looking for is really key in the overall flavour profile. Now, my understanding of not just the German market, but the way that the sort of whiskey fans in the world oversee Scotch whisky is red wine has a mixed reputation. And one of the reasons that it does is because a lot of Scotch whisky that's matured in red wine casks a lot of the red wine casks are STR. Now, these casks are not STR red wine casks. Okay. They're fresh red wine casks. Maybe just an opportunity there to explain to people what STR casks are and just to stress that these are fresh red wine casks.
Okay.
Did you change the fermentation during the bottlings?
Not for the red wine, no. I'll go into a bit more detail when we speak about the peated spirit, but for the unpeated, it's the only thing that changes is the cask type itself.
Genau. Hallo Laura übrigens. Genau, hier haben wir einen schönen Kommentar. Riecht nach Rotwein. Ja, perfekt, wenn es aus dem Rotweinfass kommt. Ne? Süß, dunkle Früchte, bisschen säuerlich, aber lecker. Genauso habe ich es gerade auch wahrgenommen. Ja, das ist natürlich auch für den ersten Step ganz schön kräftig mit dem hohen Alkoholgehalt. Also der erste Schluck des Tages für mich heute. Ich habe noch nicht so viel geschafft davor. Aber genau, bin ich bei deiner Beschreibung, Laura. Aber lecker, vor allem bin ich auch dabei.
Also, ich finde, das ist aber auch so dieser Kirschlolli, oder?
Genau, voll.
It's like a cherry lollipop.
Genau. Und auf der Flasche haben wir noch stehen, ich glaube, ich muss mal gucken, ob ich die richtige habe jetzt hier. Da ist das der, genau, wir haben hier stehen Savory Spice, Black Cherries und maritime Noten. Ja. Das ist die Beschreibung auf der Flasche. Das passt, glaube ich, ganz gut. Das ist ja eine schöne Beschreibung. Genau. Cheers to you. Ich habe es gerade schon probiert. Genau, ich bin da ein bisschen vor Daniel vorgeprescht. Hat mir gut gefallen. Finde ich eine schöne Komponente. Und uns muss ja bewusst sein, das sind Einzelkomponenten, aus denen dann später der Single Malt, die Core Release zusammengesetzt wird, der dann runtergesetzt wird auf die Trinkstärke. Man kann aber all diese Einzelkomponenten einzeln auch kaufen. Und hier, Markus, gibt uns auch noch mal was zu sagen. Hier,
Gratis.
Lecker und süß, genau. Da bin ich voll dabei. Stimmt. Aber genau, was da sagen wollte, man kann diese Flaschen kaufen, diese Einzelfassabfüllungen, die haben dann entsprechend hier immer das Fass drauf, steht dann hier drauf. Ups, da. Was ist
Ja, das ist cool gemacht.
Die sehen fast alle gleich aus, also es ist jetzt
Das ist schwierig.
Unterschied auf den Flaschen,
Ja.
aber man sieht es tatsächlich, wenn man auf der Seite drauf schaut, sieht man tatsächlich die Unterschiede. Auf den Packungen ist nur so ein kleiner Streifen drauf, oben drauf, aber man kann es erkennen. Und sie machen natürlich mit der Standardflasche weiter, warum auch nicht? Es ist ja eine ganz, ganz tolle Idee, mit dieser schönen Flasche das zu machen. Genau, aber ihr kriegt die bei uns im Shop. Ich habe vorhin ein paar freigeschaltet und eingestellt. Die sind allerdings nicht so günstig, die Single Cask, ehrlicherweise, aber es ist ja auch hochprozentig und schon was sehr Besonderes.
Ja.
Da sind wir bei grob 88 Euro. Genau. Okay, so we had the unpeated number 1 and after that we will do my special cask, the Chinkoping oak cask. Oh, I love it.
Yeah, so I'll just go back to just a bit more detail about the red wine casks. So obviously I've explained that they're fresh red wine casks. So we are very particular about the red wine casks that we're using in our maturation process. And we're working predominantly with 3 to 4 chateaus in Bordeaux. Probably the most well-known that you guys will know is Chateau Margaux, Chateau Mouton Rothschild,
Oui.
Chateau Palmer, maybe, yeah, and Calon Segur as well. So if any of you guys are familiar with your kind of Bordeaux red wines, those are some of the best and high quality red wines that are, on the market. So we're very particular about the red wine casks that we're working with. Another few requests that we have with our red wine casks is that they are used for at least 3 vintages of wine. So that's actually between 3 and 5 years maturation of wine before they come to us. So what we're looking for is that the wine itself is really reacting with the wood and the oak rather than just acting as a sort of seasoning. That's not what we're looking for. We're really looking for the spirit that has been in the cask before to be soaked right through the different layers of oak, and then how that reacts with our spirit.
Okay.
So in the red wine cask,
let me ask a question, because you said you get your cask from the 3 different wine companies, like Chateau Margaux and the other 2. But now we have here, this is a single cask, and it's written Bordeaux cask, but not the Chateau Margaux.
Yeah, so the reason is that we are allowed to talk about the chateaus because we're working with them directly.
Okay.
But the agreement's more in this setting rather than being marketed on the bottle.
Okay.
So that
we will not know which one is this.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was a Calon Segur cask.
Okay.
Because I think in Germany I've had this question before and I had to do a bit of research. I'm pretty sure it was a Calon Segur ex-Bordeaux red wine cask.
Okay, so when I have the cask number, you can have a look and tell me which chateau it is.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, 3 vintages of red wine, and that's really so that the wine has, went right into the oak itself, and then again we get that reaction with our spirit. And then finally, another stipulation with our red wine casks is that they're shipped to us in the coldest months. So we get our casks from Bordeaux between October and February. If none of you are familiar with French and Scottish weather, that is, of course, the coldest time of the year. The reason for that is that we don't want to clean these casks. We want them to be as fresh as possible. And so when we get them in the coldest months, it means that they don't require any cleaning. So what we're looking for is really the most freshest and most active Bordeaux casks that we can get. But it really is, high quality red wine. And I really do believe that, us and others that are working with red wine casks in this way are starting to change the way that people see and understand red wine casks that are used in Scotch whisky maturation. But the big thing is, fresh as possible, really high quality red wine being used for a long period of time. And then, you spoke about the oak species for the chinkapin, and that is really a big part of our story with our single malt recipe, is talking about the oak species that we use. So we'll come on to the chinkapin a bit later. But actually, within the red wine casks, they use two different types of oak species, Quercus rubor and Quercus petrea. So again, that is something that that we're interested in, that we want to talk about. And so with working with these chateaux, the 3 and 4 that I mentioned, one of the reasons that we do so is because they're using both types of oak species in their casks. And so when we're purchasing casks from them, we're sort of buying into that wood policy that they've set up.
Okay. Do you use also different types of barley?
We do use different types of barley, not in a way that would be separated for these single casks, for example. But when we speak about our different batches of core single malt, we're very transparent on our website with as much information as we can. And so with every batch of single malt that we release, you can go on our website. If it is, our batch that was just released at the start of the year, which was called, or you'll see a little detail in the bottle, RO1.2, cool. You'll be able to see the cut points, fermentation times, you'll see the yeast use, and you'll see the barley as well. So we want to be as transparent as possible. I think we're just quite careful about where that information goes, because it's understood by some people and those that want to find it, but it's not understood by everyone. So I think it's just making sure it's available for those that want it, but not making sure it's available for everyone, that it becomes confusing.
Okay. So one question, when we will continue with the next whiskey to taste, is it better to get now the peated red wine cask, in your opinion, or the unpeated chinkapin?
I would say let's stick with unpeated. There is quite a difference in both. So I think
I plan too, but you just wanted to ask you.
Yeah, let's stick with unpeated.
Okay. Also
unpeated Chinkapin.
Weiter mit dem unpeated Chinkapin Oak. Mit diesem hier. Ich gieße es mir schon mal ein und ihr werdet überrascht sein, wie die Flasche aussieht. Ungefähr so. Das ist die gleiche Flasche. Chiara trinkt wieder aus der großen Flasche. So
it's always the same bottle.
It's the same whiskey inside, I think, in your big bottle. And always in cast rings, but you mix it before. Okay. Okay, wir haben hier jetzt eben den unpeated nochmal, Chinkapin Oak Cask. Wir haben 62,5 Volumenprozent.
Ja.
Abpulen hier, genau. Und wir haben hier drauf stehen Dark Fruit, Sweet Ginger and Honey. Also wird vielleicht ein bisschen süßer, das Ganze. Und wie gesagt, wir trinken aus meinem persönlichen Baum, aus dem Mühlenbeck-Eiche. Und wir haben gerade schon gehört, wenn ihr das auch verstanden habt, dass sie sehr viel Wert legen auf die Eichenart. Also
finde ich gut.
Welche Eichensorten da auch kommen, und haben mit den Weinen oder mit den Winzern auch Vereinbarungen, welche Fässer sie kaufen. Nämlich nur, ich habe jetzt tatsächlich nicht so richtig schnell verstanden, das war die lateinischen Namen, welche Eichensorten das sind. Das können wir im Nachgang nochmal eben rausfinden. Chiara, which is the regular name from the two oak types you said? You said it is, I don't know, a Quercus 1 and Quercus 2, but what is the normal name? Not the Latin name?
I guess, I don't know if there would be a normal name as such. I know that they are typically types of French oak.
French oak?
I know that other regions also grow that oak species.
Those are French oaks?
In this particular case, but I know that there's other regions that are growing those oak species, so we can, for the purposes of this, call it French oak. But really, it's just because that's the chateaus are working with that oak species. I don't know if it's working the same as the way that like Chinkapin, Quercus Muhlenbergi, if that's the sort of term you're looking for. But let's, for the purposes of this, stick with French oak.
Okay, also die Weine sind auf jeden Fall in französischer Eiche. Welche genauen Sorten, das finden wir noch raus im Nachgang.
Ja.
So, Daniel, du kannst ja schon mal schnuppern und uns so ein bisschen deine Eindrücke schildern. Ich gucke mal in die Kommentare.
Ich finde das jetzt hier in der Nase ganz interessant. Also im Endeffekt, eben hatten wir komplett dunkle Früchte, so Kirschnoten und sowas. Jetzt ist es so, dass im ersten Moment dachte ich so, oh, hellere Früchte, so im Vergleich. Umso länger ich daran rieche, wird es aber gefühlt immer dunkler. Es ist auf jeden Fall sehr, sehr fruchtig. Und ich habe auch so einen leichten, so einen Vanille-Holzeinfluss, finde ich. Aber positiv gemeint, absolut positiv.
Ja, genau. Markus is writing, it's like liquid gold in the glass.
Yeah, so Quercus Muhlenbergi or Chinkapin oak is probably the easiest way to talk about it. So it is an American oak and not commonly used in Scotch whisky maturation, and certainly I don't know it being used as a full term maturation. I know there's a few people that have used Chinkapin oak, but not for full maturation. So this is again a core part of our core single malt recipe. This makes up the second largest proportion of our cask type. So the way that our recipe works, smallest proportion ex Bordeaux red wine, then virgin Chinkapin oak, and then the largest proportion is the ex-American rye cask. So virgin Chinkapin oak is, I did say American oak. It's native to Central and Eastern North America, and it's a very sweet oak. So in actual fact, you can eat the acorns off the tree. For us, they are virgin oak casks. So this is a virgin Chinkapin oak cask sample that you're trying. And a couple of reasons that we chose to work with virgin Chinkapin oak. One of the reasons that we were looking for, that very kind of sweet flavour profile, butterscotch, toffee, the kind of honeyed note, and the Chinkapin is just overall super, super sweet. Of course, being virgin oak casks, and I should mention they are high char, fresh toast. The char level is 4, which sometimes classed as alligator skin. They are pretty much black on the inside when we get them. They, of course, take on colour and character. Our spirit takes on colour and character very quickly with these cask types. And overall, I think they just give our spirit a real bit of kind of unique funkiness, but overall just that kind of well-rounded, kind of balanced sweetness. I think the Chinkapin just works so well. And in all honesty, the sort of virgin Chinkapin sweet spot, I've not tried anything older, of course, because our distillery doesn't have anything that's older than that yet, but that kind of between 3 and 5 years old, it does seem to work really well. So I'm looking forward to seeing how it matures beyond that. But what I'm super excited about as well is when we refill those casks, and they're not virgin oak casks, but, maybe being filled again, and then maybe a time after that. But for me, they just give a real kind of sweetness to our overall distillery character.
I remember last year, Daniel was on the bottle market in Bremen here. I was not there. I had no time. I had to do his tasting because he wanted to go to the fair, and I had to work, and he worked on the fair. So and he came back and said there was one whiskey which was really, really the best from the whole fair, and it was the Chinkapin oak from Raasay, but I think it was a peated one.
Yes, the peated one.
And
so obviously we can come on to talk about the difference between the two spirit types and how the one cask type can just differ so much between two spirit types. And I think that's one thing that's really interesting about how we do these tastings. We want to, rather than just talk about how our one spirit matures in a load of different cask types, I think it's interesting to actually deep dive and, why we're producing two spirit types and why we're maturing them across these different cask types and how the peated versus unpeated Chinkapin is so different, but then how they come together and how they act within this, our one bottling, our core single malt. So yeah, it's quite a unique way of doing things, and probably worth mentioning that I think Germany's the only market in the whole world out with the UK that has had all 6 single casks. So
Okay, cool.
it's not that often that we get to talk about all 6 at once, or even in this case.
It's a pleasure for us.
Yeah.
I think it's because your importer for Germany, Kirsch, is a big group of nerds. They wanted it.
Yes, of course. Very big nerds.
They wanted it only for themselves, and then they had to sell some bottles.
Yeah, and I think it's important that first and foremost, people understand the Isle of Raasay core single malt. You know, if we just come to market with an unpeated rye, people have to understand what that means. You know, that isn't necessarily just the Isle of Raasay, but we want people to know when they pick up an unpeated single cask rye, okay, this is part of the overall picture of what Raasay are doing. And Germany just happens to be one of the most kind of well-versed whiskey markets in the world, that they understand, or they're at the point now they understand the Isle of Raasay core single malt. You know, it's such an educated market. We're in a position to you know, launch all single casks together and be able to do things like this and talk people through the deconstruction. And actually, what's quite interesting,
whiskey drinkers, but it's okay when you say it.
And what's quite interesting when we talk about sometimes we do tasting with all 6 casks. What we ask people to do is make a little blend at the end and come up with their own little version of the Isle of Raasay single malt.
I was thinking about doing all 6 in this tasting, but we always
Too much.
It always lasts too long. So we are now at 40 minutes, and we had 2. When we try 6, I think we would have to talk 3 hours.
Yeah, right.
So,
You're right.
I've tasted all 6 with Kirsch.
Good,
Ja.
good.
Genau. Und für euch zu Hause, wenn ihr alle 6
probieren.
wenn ihr alle 6 probieren wollt, wir haben nur diese 4 aktuell im Shop, aber ihr könnt auch die anderen über uns bestellen. Ihr könnt mir einfach eine E-Mail schicken, wenn ihr sagt, wir wollen die Rice haben.
Ja.
Wir haben die nicht als Samples, wir haben die leider nur als ganze Flasche. Es kostet das gleiche wie die anderen. Schickt eine E-Mail, ich hau eine Order raus, dann eine Sammelbestellung für die Sachen, die ihr haben wollt. Wenn ihr Bock drauf habt, auf die Rye-Geschichten, gar kein Problem, kriegen wir auch für euch. Genau.
Also beide sehr, sehr lecker, kann ich empfehlen. Ja.
Das stimmt. Okay, müssen wir noch was sagen zu dem, Daniel, müssen wir noch was sagen zu dem Chinkapin? Hast du was gesagt?
Was soll ich sagen? Also ich habe ein bisschen was gesagt. Also grundsätzlich, Chinkapin und auch Virgin Oak, es ist mein Thema irgendwie gefühlt das letzte Jahr, egal bei wem, ich finde es großartig. Und auch hier, Raasay macht das so, so gut. Laura hat es sehr gut beschrieben. Orange, Nüsse, Karamell, okay. Die Nüsse sehe ich hier auch komplett. Ich finde aber halt, der wechselt so ein bisschen von dunkler und heller Frucht, das ist alles so dabei. Für mich hat er noch so einen leichten irgendwie Pfeffermoment dabei, aber angenehm, so eine leichte Würzigkeit ist da. Also a little bit spicy. Es ist a great one. Es ist really great. Also Virgin Oak hatte ich vorher gar nicht so sehr auf dem Zettel und Chinkapin oder unpeated noch gar nicht. Finde ich super. Echt ganz, ganz gut gemacht.
Ich suche gerade die andere Flasche. Ah, hier liegt
Genau
okay.
Mein Beuteschema.
Genau. Okay. So I will show a short video about the building of your distillery because you have a time-lapse video. We have a time-lapse video from the new building. I think it's 1 minute. I will show it just a second. Videos, time-lapse. So, zack. Hoppala. Also für euch zu Hause, ich will einmal ein Video zeigen, wie diese Brennerei gebaut wurde. Es gibt nämlich ein Time-Lapse-Video. Ich muss das nur mal eben aufmachen. Ich bin halt so doof, um mein Computer zu bedienen. Da ist es. So, und da seht ihr das im Hintergrund, wie diese Brennerei entstanden ist. Maybe, Chiara, you can tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so you want me to wait till it's done, or yeah, you know, so if we just keep an eye on this kind of older building on the right hand side, I'll come on to talk about that later, because that was one of the original buildings in this site, and the newer building that you can see being constructed is in fact our kind of main production area. The building that you can see up the back there, up at the top of the hill, that is our bottling hall and our offices as well. So that's kind of how the site is set up.
Okay, so in the back, this is the filling room and the office.
Yeah.
And it looks like a warehouse.
Yeah, it does kind of act as that as well.
Do you have windows?
Yeah, there's windows. You can't see it from the
One.
front. You know, the office, the back. Yeah.
Get in there, work, don't look out.
So the way that the site was set up is you could see the old building on the right-hand side. We refer to that as Borrowdale House. And in actual fact, you know, I've been speaking so much about how we have two kind of core products, the Isle of Raasay single malt and the Isle of Raasay gin. I didn't talk about our third kind of product and brand, which is Borrowdale House. And that is that building that you saw on the right-hand side, which was kind of already there as part of the development. Now, Borrowdale House is our distillery hotel. So within Borrowdale House, we have 6 ensuite bedrooms. We claim to be the only distillery in Scotland that you can stay in. You can go to sleep and wake up literally within the same building as our distillery. And then the newer part of the building that you see on the left-hand side, that is our production area. Now, it is all one site. It's just Borrowdale House, which is now the distillery hotel, was the original part of the site. And that was the building and the site that our co-founders bought when they first purchased the site for Isle of Raasay Distillery. Now, you should have seen the building at the back, which I mentioned is our bottling hall and our offices. That's where every bottle of Isle of Raasay that you have ever seen, enjoyed, you know, come across, every bottle that ever has been anywhere in the world has been bottled from that bottling hall up the back of the distillery. Now, up until January this year, that site was, or that bottling hall, it was all, or everything that was bottled from that site was done on a 4-head bottling line, pretty much by hand. In January this year, we did, we invested in a semi-automated bottling line. Now, if you think last year, in core single malt alone, we bottled over 100,000 bottles, over 30,000 bottles of gin, single casks, special releases, and everything else, all was done on a 4-head bottling line by local people on the island out of that one building. Pretty incredible and actually hard to think about from that one tiny little space by local people. We do pride ourselves on being able to keep that little line on our bottle that says, you know, everything is matured and bottled on Raasay. So really nothing leaves the island unless it's in a bottle with a cork, with a cap, ready to be consumed. And that really is a big part of our story and our ethos. And not an easy thing to do. A lot of hurdles in the way, you know, there isn't a huge pool of local employment. And even if we wanted to employ more people on Raasay, there's not a lot of housing on the island. So there's a lot of hurdles in the way that make that statement pretty hard. But as a company, it's something that we really pride ourselves on, is matured and bottled on Raasay. And really nothing that has ever been bottled by Isle of Raasay Distillery it's always been done on the island by local people. This is some of our team as well. So Joseph, that you see there, born and bred on Raasay, he is sort of warehouse manager. And if you go back to, so Alistair, our co-founder, to go back one more. So that's Norman. Norman is our distillery manager. His house is actually behind the bottling hall building. Now, Norman was born and bred on Raasay. He went to Glasgow to study to be an engineer, then went to work with a kind of engineer and construction firm. So Norman was actually employed as one of the groundsmen, the companies that put the foundations in for the distillery. And then as the distillery build went on, he started to take on more tasks in the build of the distillery. And eventually was employed by Alistair and Bill to work in production as our distillery manager. And he's now operations director of the distillery, born and bred on Raasay. And actually Norman and his wife, as I mentioned, who just lived behind the distillery, they had the first baby born on Raasay in, I think, 12 years. So not only are we creating a microeconomy, we're trying to recreate a new island population as well in the distillery. So Norman's a perfect example of, you know, skilled employment. Had the distillery not been there, it's likely that Norman and his family would have to, you know, live elsewhere, most likely in the Central Belt. So it's about bringing local people back and creating skilled employment for them as well.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
oh, which one is this?
Angus actually doesn't work in our distillery anymore, so maybe we.
So, sorry, older pictures here.
Yeah.
It looks
Yeah,
like
A
Gimli.
lot of team photos here. Check, check,
Yeah.
check.
So
That's
Which one is-
Alistair. Alistair's our co-founder, master distiller. He is really the brains behind all of our, unique production processes, our wood policy, everything that makes Isle of Raasay innovative and exciting is really down to Alistair. So yeah, Alistair had quite a rich family history in distilling. He has a degree in botany, but his great-grandfather was a whiskey blender down in the borders of Scotland. And really, when he had the idea to build and develop the Isle of Raasay Distillery, or a distillery, sorry, it was always going to be back in his family roots, which was down the borders of Scotland. So that's really where he wanted to build a distillery. So if you've ever come across our parent name, Raasay R&B, you ever seen the name R&B?
Sorry?
It's on those Wellery weight bottles. That actually refers to Raasay and Borders, which has always kind of been in the background as, a potential other distillery to recreate Alistair's kind of family history and roots back down to borders of Scotland.
Okay. Oh, almost.
So yeah, that's some of our team, and the view which overlooks right over into the cooling of sky. So a pretty rugged landscape, as I mentioned, really remote. But a pretty special place as well, if any of you have ever been. We claim to have the best distillery view in Scotland.
Yeah, looks like that.
Yeah,
We had a really great view.
Bunnahabhain can make a pretty good claim, but I think that we're still just hit them to the post a little bit.
Okay, so let's continue with the third one. We go to the peated ones. Is it better
Peated
to
red
take a
wine.
pen or the red wine now?
Red wine.
Red wine?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go with the red wine. So you said it's heavily peated. So can you tell us how much ppm is it in the peated spirit?
Yeah, so just to kind of reiterate what I said earlier, 50% of the year unpeated spirit, the other 50% heavily peated spirit, matured separately. And this is kind of a way to showcase our two spirit types. I think that what the two spirit types bring to the core single malt are completely different. And actually tasting them across the same cask type is a really interesting way of differentiating the two spirit types. So we buy our barley in already peated, and it comes in at a ppm of around kind of 48 to 50. So certainly on the heavily peated side of things. By the time it goes through the production processes, the ppm levels sit between kind of 12 and 15.
Yeah.
Now in the core single malt, which is a marriage of peated and unpeated spirit, we say the ppm sits between kind of 6 and 8. But because you're trying the just the peated spirit and at cask strength, it will definitely be between that kind of 12 to 15 ppm mark.
Okay.
And all ones are not colored and not unchill filtered?
Yeah, non-natural colour and unchill filtered.
Great.
So we're using 100% Scottish barley in our production. And we are also using our peat from Aberdeenshire. So it's Highland style peat. Quite important because I think people think about peat, they think about Ardbeg, Lagavulin and Lafroig, that kind of Islay style peat, which loads of people love. I love, very distinctive. But I think when people think about peated whiskey, sometimes that's what they think about. And if you don't love that style of peated whiskey, people think they don't love any style of peated whiskey. Highland peat is a very different style of peat. It's that kind of more subtle bonfire smoke. Got a lot of kind of coastal character in there as well. When we spoke about the barley coming in at 48 to 50, that is, kind of in the higher end of ppm. But I think that kind of Highland style peat gives it more of that kind of bonfire flavour rather than the kind of medicine cabinet, TCP, kind of Isla petrol smoke.
Okay. So, während Daniel dann noch schnüffelt und uns gleich mal sagen wird, was er da riecht, ganz kurz nochmal zusammengefasst. Also wir haben hier jetzt die torfigen Varianten von den Whisky. Wir fangen jetzt an mit dem Isle of Raasay Single Cask Peated Red Wine Cask. Also haben wir wieder die Ex-Bordeaux-Fässer, aber eben mit dem torfigen New Make. Sie benutzen ein Malz, das so 48 bis 50 ppm hat. Über den Produktionsprozess geht es natürlich ein bisschen sanfter, weil es wird ja quasi immer der ppm-Gehalt vom Malz angegeben. Und
Ganz
nach
richtig.
der Produktion sind wir deutlich niedriger natürlich. Ne? Es verliert ja ein bisschen, und über die Fasslagerung wird es nochmal weniger, verliert es ein bisschen von dem ppm-Gehalt im gesamten Whisky. Und dann haben wir ja auch noch auf Fassstärke gerechnet. Das heißt, es wird runtergerechnet, weil wir das auf Trinkstärke runterbringen im finalen Single Malt und in der Mischung mit dem nicht torfigen Fässern wird es natürlich nochmal weniger, sodass wir, wenn ich es richtig verstanden habe, so auf 6 ppm ungefähr kommen auf die normale Flasche, wenn man das rechnen würde. Ne? Aber das ist, glaube ich, ein Wert, der für viele eher schwierig zu greifen ist, weil man ja auch bei einem Octomore nicht weiß, wie viel ppm sind denn in der Flasche, sondern sie schreiben nur drauf, was das Malz hatte. Und das ist ja dieses Super Pete, bla bla bla. Das ist völliger Quatsch, diese Zahl, weil genau wie Chiara gerade erklärt hat, wird es eben über den Produktionsprozess, über die Lagerung, über das Runtersetzen mit Wasser auf Trinkstärke, gut, das fällt vom Octomore weg, aber wird es einfach weniger. Ne, deswegen das einmal zur Erklärung und um Daniel ein bisschen Zeit zu verschaffen, denn jetzt kannst du uns sagen, was deine Nase so hergibt. Erzähl mal. Laura hilft dir ein bisschen hier. Bei Laura ist schon Weihnachten. So Laura writes smoke. It's like raisin and tastes like Christmas.
Yeah, and actually one of the things that I think the peated spirit showcases a bit more is our coastal influence. You know, we are an island distillery. We mature all of our casks, 100 meters from the sea. There should be a real coastal influence in our spirit, that kind of saltiness, the maritime. And I do think the red wine showcases that more so than the other cask types, and especially with the peated spirit. So you should be getting a lot of the kind of salty and coastal characters in this one.
Ja, okay. Daniel, was riechst du?
Also tatsächlich habe ich hier für mich gerade in der Nase das erste Mal auch eine Ähnlichkeit zu einem anderen Malt, zu Balachin vom Edelgauer, finde ich in der Nase eine gewisse Ähnlichkeit. Aber ich habe hier wieder genau, ja, wer weiß. Ich habe hier wieder genau wie bei der normalen Rotweinabfüllung einfach genau diese weinige, dunkelfruchtige Note. Und ja, im Endeffekt wunderschön, wie sie es gerade gesagt hat, Lagerfeuer, Rauch. Jetzt nicht irgendwie das Medizinische, gar nicht richtig angenehm, als wenn ich draußen einfach so ein kleines Feuer anmache, im Sommer draußen sitze. Wunderschön, genial. Guck mal hier, The Dram Experience. Ja, Cinnamon Cassis. Ja, perfect.
Probably a good time to mention as well that the way that we are producing our unpeated spirit versus the way that we're producing our peated spirit is actually quite different. So one of the main differences is, I spoke earlier about we had a blank canvas when we designed the production processes. We had things that we could turn off, turn on, add in, take out. And one of the things that we incorporated into the production was a cooling jacket on the line arm of the wash still. So the cooling jacket, if you all think about the line arm on the still, there's a small, slight incline, but there is a sort of, pretty much acts as a jacket, sits on the outside of the line arm. We can turn it on and off, but it's predominantly off for unpeated spirit, but the cooling jacket's on for peated spirit. And basically what that means is that the alcohol vapors rise and fall more quickly, produces more reflux, which then produces more oil. It creates a heavier spirit, a spirit with more kind of viscosity. If we talk about that more kind of mouthfeel, we get that with the peated spirit versus the unpeated because of that line arm, the cooling jacket. Yeah, so you can actually, that's a great photo. So you can actually see it on the still that's closest to us. just
Yeah.
at the top there. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's the one. Yeah.
Das stimmt, sehr
You'll
mundfüllend.
also notice the cooling jackets on all of the washbacks.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's more of a kind of sustainability aspect to the production.
Okay.
So yeah, the cooling jacket is only on for peated spirit. So it means the two new mates are
Is it cooling jacket, or what's the name?
cooling jacket. Yeah, so
Okay,
basically,
I was understanding
Killing.
killing jacket.
no, sorry,
Killing.
cooling.
Killing in the name of.
So yeah, so basically what it does is it cools, creating
Okay.
more
Yeah.
and rise and fall more quickly.
No. So we were saying in the future we were saying cooling in the name of.
Yeah. So yeah, when I speak a lot about the sort of innovation within the production processes, that's the sort of thing that I'm referring to.
Genau. Markus findet die Farbe schön, wie ein frischer und fruchtiger Roséwein. Sehr schön. Und unsere Freunde aus Kanada hier finden im Nachgang noch ein bisschen Walnüsse. So they found some walnuts in the taste. Okay. Also ich mag das gerne. Mir gefällt das sehr, sehr gut. Ich finde auch nicht, dass das super krass torfig ist, aber da sind Daniel und ich ja immer so ein bisschen, was ist schon Torf? Schmecken wir nicht mehr. Aber es gefällt mir gut und man schmeckt das natürlich raus, auf jeden Fall.
The nose is a bit blind because we drink too much peat.
Genau. Aber genau, mir gefällt der ganz gut. Ich bin aber umso gespannter, was der Letzte in dieser Runde, zumindest von den Fassstärken, wirklich bringt. Weil Daniel hat da ja so von geschwärmt, von dem Peated Chinkepin. So, deswegen switche ich mal um hier. Wir gehen mal auf den nächsten und machen quasi Daniels Highlight from the Bottle Market. Den haben wir jetzt quasi als letzte.
Den habe ich auch damals Laura und ihrem Mann empfohlen und ich glaube, mich zu erinnern, dass Lauras Mann den großartig fand, oder?
Ah, okay. Ihr habt euch da getroffen, stimmt, ich erinnere mich wieder. Genau.
Du musstest ja arbeiten.
Ja, genau. Sehr lecker. So it's very, very tasty, very good. So.
Yeah, so again, just thinking about, maybe even go back to the unpeated Chinkepin, just thinking about that flavour profile that you got from the unpeated, that real sweetness, the butterscotch, the toffee, the honey, but now incorporate, that bonfire smoke into that. And actually what I think is quite interesting about the Chinkepin is if we think about charring, that is really, we're already thinking about that kind of burnt flavour, burnt toffee, burnt butterscotch. And I think that's why the peated Chinkepin works so well as well, because we've got that kind of burntness already happening with the toast and the char, and then we bring peated spirit into the mix. So yeah, it just works quite well. And I think peat and sherry we know works together super well, and I think it is because of that sweetness and the smokiness. And I think this is a similar idea. You've got the real sweetness from the Chinkepin oak, and then we've got the peat involved as well.
I fell in love.
Drum Experience is asking where does the cinnamon flavor come from? Is it from the cask or from the fermentation?
With the Chinkepin, I would say with the peated spirit, it is. Yeah, I would say maybe a bit of both. If we were talking about the rye casks, I would maybe be more inclined to say it was coming from the wood. So I will just talk about the rye briefly, just because it is a big part of the story that we're talking about here. So we aren't tasting any of the rye cask samples tonight, but that would be the third part of the story. So we would have the red wine, we would have the Chinkepin, and then we would have the rye. Now, what we're getting from the ex-American rye casks is spice, cinnamon, black pepper, and one of the reasons that we chose to work with ex-American rye casks versus bourbon casks is to get that kind of black pepper in the spice versus the kind of vanilla note that you get from ex-bourbon casks. So when we're talking about cinnamon, I would say it maybe is from the fermentation, and it is maybe a kind of sweetness. And I'll go on to talk about our water source and maybe how that brings a bit of sweetness into our spirit as well. But yeah, just finally on the rye, we're predominantly working with Woodford Reserve casks. I'm sure probably a lot of you guys will have heard of Woodford Reserve. It's no small distillery in the US. But one of the reasons that we chose to work with Woodford casks was, to get that black pepper and the spice. But one of the things with rye that you can get in distilleries with a rye high mash bill is a grassy note. Don't know how well that translates. Do you know what I mean by like grass? A note, like a kind of hay, kind of farmy note. So you can get that in rye distilleries with a really high rye mash bill. Woodford Reserve have a mash bill of around 53%, so predominantly on the lower end of rye. So what you get with that is the black pepper, the spice, but you don't get the kind of hay bales, the farmyard kind of grassiness. Yeah. And I think one of the reasons that we chose to work with rye, which again in Scotch whisky, not super commonly used, and especially not in a core single malt recipe. But I think Alistair really appreciated the way that the perception of rye was changing over recent years. We are a young distillery. We have a very young team. I think the average age of the company overall is about 31. And I think Alistair...
Very young.
Yeah. And I think Alistair, you can decide what end of it I'm on. Am I above average, below average? You can work it out for yourself. But yeah, I think Alistair really appreciated the way that the perception of rye changed in recent years. It became something that was being used in the mixology scene by bartenders. It was quite trendy. And I think it is because it was a very versatile spirit. And actually, for a lot of people that prefer a spirit-driven whiskey, the rye is a perfect example of appreciating the quality of our new make.
So now I'm feeling a little bit bad because I only choose 4 of them and there's no rye today. So you talk so much about the rye. Maybe we have to do it again only with the rye.
Maybe.
To have a party with the rye.
But also it's good for people to, they can go out and find it themselves, and if they want to taste it, then it's a good opportunity for them to do so. The rye is in Germany somewhere, so I guess it gives people to go and find it.
They could buy a bottle at my shop, it's no problem, but we decided only to have 4 whiskeys in the tasting, in the whiskey talk, because it lasts too long.
Yeah,
and I think we sent a small bottle, a miniature of the core range to everyone who bought a sample package, so they have a 5th one. They have the complete single malt with a rye inside.
And I think maybe quite good, just so people know when we talk about the 6 casks, what that means. But just quickly going back to that cinnamon note. So I should probably talk about our water on Raasay. There is lots of it. We're surrounded by it, and it rains a lot on Raasay. So if we think about the kind of main barley regions in Scotland, which is predominantly the East Coast, Raasay is 100% wetter. That's a fact than the East Coast of Scotland, where the barley grows. We get a lot of rainfall there. It's very exposed, and we have a lot of harsh conditions as well. And so all the water on Raasay comes from the highest point on the island, which is Duncana. You actually brought a photo up of Duncana earlier, which is the highest point. It's that kind of flat top hill.
Yeah, I will have a look.
We can maybe bring that back up.
Where is it?
Do it.
Ja, ich suche ja schon.
So, yeah.
I think I have it. Just a second. If I guess it's the right one. Duncan, yeah. This one.
Yeah, exactly. So Duncana, which you can see there, is the highest point on Raasay. Now, all of the water from our distillery comes from a borehole, which sits out the back of the production site. And we're one of the very few Scottish distilleries that can make claim that it's the same water used throughout the entire process. So we use the same water for the original mash, right through to distillation, right through to the dilution of our bottlings as well. And one of the reasons that we want to talk about our water so much is it is super unique. So all of the water used in that production comes from Duncana, which you can see in front of you. It's volcanic. It's very mineral rich. And if you think about the journey that the water has to take from Duncana down to the distillery, pretty long journey, picking up a lot of minerals on the way. But one of the minerals that our water is very rich in from the journey from Duncana to the distillery is manganese. Now, I don't know how well that translates.
Magnesium.
I don't know if it is, because magnesium is a word in English as well.
Okay.
Manganese.
Manganese?
Manganese. Yeah, it maybe needs a Google Translate.
I use it. Manganese.
But one of the things manganese does do is encourages fermentation. And so there's a real kind of fruity character.
It's
to
mangan.
Ah,
So we call it mangan.
So yeah, there's a real fruity character to our new make. And one of the reasons that we have that is because of the kind of minerals that we have in the water.
Okay, so Mangan ist ein Metall und essentieller Mikronährstoff für alle Lebewesen. Es ist wie Eisen in fast allen Böden und Gesteinen vorhanden. In nennenswerten Mengen ist es auch in fossilem organischem Material wie Steinkohle, Braunkohle, Torf etc. enthalten. So, jetzt sind wir alle schlauer. So, I just read the Wikipedia Mangan thing. Okay, let's go. Okay, Daniel, jetzt erzähl mal eben, wir haben schon ein paar Kommentare gesehen hier, glaube ich, von Bombe Very Delicious und so, sehr lecker, war davor, glaube ich, aber Laura sagt hier, Rauch, dunkle Früchte, Mandeln, Karamell und Toffee. Gehst du mit oder willst du was dagegen würfeln?
ich hätte noch zusätzlich ein bisschen zu ergänzen, ein bisschen Ingwer, aber wirklich hauchdünn. Nicht zu scharf, also wirklich einfach so, dass es ein bisschen würzig dadurch wird.
Steht auch auf der Flasche. Sweet Ginger.
Habe ich aber in letzter Zeit häufiger. Es scheint irgendwie modern zu sein, ob es irgendwie in der Produktion bei dem einen oder anderen inzwischen mehr mit dabei ist, keine Ahnung.
Ich glaube, übrigens 61,8% bei diesem Single Cask, hatte ich glaube ich noch nicht erzählt.
Ja, und wie immer nicht gefärbt, nicht kühlgefiltert, klar. Also es ist großartig gemacht. Also ich kann mich daran satt riechen und trinken. Ich finde den extrem gut. Dunkle Früchte gehe ich auch komplett mit, finde ich witzig. Wir reden hier immer noch über Chinkapin Peatage, Virgin Oak. Da erwarte ich eigentlich per se vom Profil her eigentlich keine dunklen Früchte. Ist aber echt großartig gemacht. Also,
ja. Und ich muss jetzt mal sagen, gut, das ist Nummer 4, ne? Wir haben jetzt
Ja.
61,8% und ich finde die Butter weich. So,
Ja.
so soft for nearly 62 ABV. But maybe it's because it's a forced one.
ja. And very sweet.
Okay, als Finale haben wir ja heute noch quasi die Miniatur vom Original Single Malt für euch mit reingepackt. Dafür auch thank you, Chiara, for giving all our customers one of the small bottle with a tasting set. So it came from your distillery. So thank you very much for that. And I think we can enjoy it now. We can enjoy now the full taste of Raasay, including the rye cask parts.
All types inclusive.
And drink that. And of course, you can buy the bottle in our shop on heimathaven.com. So as I tell every time, it's like Amazon, but we are much slower and more expensive. That's what we do.
So our Isle of Raasay single malt, it's kind of always hard to slot it into these tastings because you can't do it at the start because it's lightly peated. It's hard to do it in the middle because you're just not really sure if it fits. Then if you do it at the end, it's obviously lower ABV. So what I would say to people is maybe just leave a little bit and come back to it another day, maybe tomorrow or at the weekend. Just because if you've had cask strength and heavily peated, I think it's just good to try it kind of on a fresher palate, just given that it is a lower ABV. Our Isle of Raasay single malt kind of covers everything that I mentioned. It covers the island, it covers the water, it covers, bottled by local people. When I talk about it being encapsulation of everything that we're all about, it very much is just that. But overall, I think want you to keep the different flavour profiles that we spoke about from the single casks in mind, you know, that dark fruits, the kind of sweetness of the chinkapin, the butter, the toffee, the honey. I know we didn't speak about the rye, but even, you know, start to think about that spice and the black pepper that you're getting. And I guess that kind of balance between the peated and the unpeated, the kind of coastalness, the saltiness, the maritime notes, the kind of subtle bonfire smoke. And I think not everyone understands this when we talk about it, but I think the best way to think about the Isle of Raasay whiskey is it is Raasay, you know. Think about being on the island. It's raining, it's windy, there's midges, you know, it's exposed, but it's beautiful. And yeah, there's sea air, it's salty, you know. I think when you're having a dram of Raasay, just, you know, it should really just take you to the island and imagine that that's where you're enjoying it. Not everyone understands that, but I hope that makes sense and you understand what I mean by that.
I think they understand it. So,
Yeah.
Daniel Sascha has just one more question because about the cask on your island or in your warehouse. Do you have some more type of cask in your warehouse hidden?
Yeah, we do.
Some new whiskeys?
You know, I spoke a lot about innovation. I think it would be hypocritical of us to speak about innovation and just, you know, speak about these three cask types or bourbon or sherry or whatever. So yeah, I think oak species is a big part of our story. It's something that Alistair's really interested in, and it's something that we're looking into a lot and carrying out a bit of research in. But actually last week we brought out a bottling for our Slange Club, which is those that are kind of signed up to our kind of like fan club, or those followers that want to keep an eye on what we're doing. Last week we brought out a bottle to celebrate winning Tourism Destination of the Year, and it is a fully matured ex-Manzanilla cask. Now I spoke about that kind of saltiness, the maritime notes. Manzanilla is that, but to another level. You know, Manzanilla itself is, you know, from San Luca and the Sherry Triangle. It's, you know, super salty, loads of maritime notes, and the influence it's had on our distillery character has just been so interesting. So yeah, that's an example of the sort of cask type that we have in the warehouse. We of course have sherry casks. We actually have some bourbon casks as well. But what we do have is a load of virgin oak, but different oak species casks maturing. So we have some oak species from Colombia, from Hungary, from Russia, from, you know, a load of different places, and just understanding how those different oak species reacts with our spirit. So yeah, it's been quite we've got an interesting array of casks in our warehouse.
Has anybody ever heard of a whiskey matured in German oak?
No, but it's strange because there's lots of trees there, so
Yeah. So,
maybe something to think about.
We have a lot of oaks here. Why don't you use it?
I think Ecuador uses it.
German oak?
Yes, I think from Elsborn.
Okay. Okay. Just a second. Okay, Chiara just sent me a link to a video on YouTube, and I started it, and there comes some commercial clips first. Okay, do I have to? Should I play it now?
Yeah, I was just going to say, you know, that we do have a load of different cask types. We are working on different experimental things, but I think really the core single malt, the 6 cask recipe, which you guys have tried, is really at the heart of everything that we're doing, and really what we want people to think about when they think about the Isle of Raasay Distillery. But the reason that I asked you to play that video is, I don't know if you guys know Dave Broom well, but he's a man that's better at putting these things into words than I am. So this is a good way to kind of sum up everything that I've spoken about.
Okay, I played.
Welcome to the Isle of Raasay Distillery. My name's Craig. I'll be your tour guide today.
No, sorry, that's not the right one.
Certain times it's a bit hard for everyone to make the journey up to the distillery itself. So instead,
okay, so there was a wrong link or wrong video. I don't know. Do it again. Where Scotch whiskey matured? I don't. It's only this. When I use your link, I get to this video.
Yeah,
Sorry.
try that one. That might be. If it doesn't work, it's okay. But
No, it will work now. Just a second. I think it was wrong. I was wrong. So.
He was wrong.
Yes, always. It's always me.
Always.
Where is it? Huh?
Nice word. Huh?
Huh? This one. Okay.
that's the one. Yeah.
Okay. That looks cool.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. This island is really an encapsulation of the Hebridean experience. It is where people continue to believe in the place where they lived and the dreams came true. It's a further evidence of a renaissance in Raasay. It encapsulates the Raasay spirit and this distillery. And so, just to kind of paraphrase Sorley MacLean, may the whiskey from here be honeyed and tinged with smoke and sweet fruits and spices. May it be praised and be a softly eloquent ambassador for this magical island.
So a good way to round off the kind of island story and the whiskey as well.
So we had some comments about the German oak. So we had an oak from the Pfalz in Germany, and said more used it. So it was used before. Okay, thank you for that. Okay, Daniel, hattest du noch Fragen auf deiner Liste?
Do you do other? Ja.
Du hast die Fragen vorbereitet.
Die meisten Fragen waren weg, aber do you do other things in the future? Other casts or other stuff?
Yeah, quite a lot actually. We've probably not got enough time to cover it all. Different cask types is certainly one of them, but I guess one of the most kind of prominent parts of our near future, which I should speak about, is a second distillery. So we have purchased a farm site, which will become a distillery just outside Machrihanish in Campbelltown. So if things go to plan in the timeline that we're working on, by 2025, we will be producing a Campbelltown style spirit from Campbelltown region and from our own Machrihanish distillery.
Sounds great.
Okay, dann hattest du ich habe nämlich den normalen Single Malt nicht hier. Ich habe es nicht geschafft, im Laden vorbeizufahren.
Ich habe den hier, aber ich kriege einfach dieses kleine Sample nicht auf, gerade ohne irgendwie Messer. Also, es dreht einfach gerade so durch.
No rye for you today.
Ich könnte ein Messer holen, ich kann es versuchen.
Genau, also für euch zu Hause, wenn ihr probiert, ist tatsächlich nach wie vor von den jungen, modernen Brennereien einer meiner Lieblings-Single Malts, im Jungen auf jeden Fall. Also Raasay.
Der ist hier verdunstet bei mir, der ist so schnell leer gewesen, leider die teure Flasche wohl.
Es ist bei mir so ähnlich, habe ich tatsächlich auch immer irgendwie eine Flasche zu Hause von. Und ihr wisst, wie das bei mir ist. Ich habe so viele Sachen immer, die wir in Tastings über haben. Ich habe eigentlich relativ viel Wechsel, aber ein Raasay habe ich tatsächlich immer zu Hause. Finde ich richtig gut. Gibt es natürlich auch bei uns im Online-Shop, wollen wir euch nicht vorenthalten. Den kann man bei uns kaufen für, ich glaube, unter 10.000 Euro. Irgendwie unter 60, 58, 90, glaube ich, die Flasche. Aber er schmeckt wie 65, 90. Das habt ihr ja wahrscheinlich schon gemerkt, wenn ihr jetzt getrunken habt. Ich würde zum Ausklang euch gerne noch ein letztes Video zeigen, auch über die Brennerei. Damit würde ich quasi unseren Livestream heute ein bisschen enden lassen. So, Claire, I will show a last video to get all audiences out of the stream with a nice view on your distillery. I thank you very much for your time today. And thank you very much for your really detailed and interesting explanations. So that was a very good deep dive for us. And I hope it was all English was enough for you, that you could understand everything. Und genau, an alle zu Hause, vielen Dank, dass ihr dabei wart. Lasst ein Like da, drückt irgendwo auf Wir mögen das. teilt das Video im Anschluss gerne, macht ein bisschen Werbung für uns, für diesen Livestream. Ihr wisst, man kriegt hier für relativ schmales Geld eigentlich eine ganz coole Auswahl an Whiskys. Wir sind auch im Überlegen, das noch mal ein bisschen noch zu verändern in Zukunft, dass es vielleicht auch doch noch mal eine kleine Box drumherum gibt, dass man es auch schön verschenken kann. Und genau, hier thanks Chiara from Marcus. I think the whole audience says thank you for your explanations. It was really good to hear what you had to say today. And I think we are all interested in the rye cask now. No. We will have a next live stream. Also wir haben noch einen neuen Livestream, nicht im Juni, das haben wir datumsmäßig nicht geschafft. Es wird im Juli starten. So we will have a new whiskey talk in July, and we have Matt Hepburn. Is you related to you? Do you know from Neen? It's Matt Hepburn. Do you know him?
Neen, yes.
No, that's funny. I never really come across that name, but no relation that I know of. Anyway,
maybe it's your brother. Genau, also beim nächsten Mal am 6. Juli haben wir Neen dabei. Da werden wir auch 4 Samples haben. Ich weiß tatsächlich noch nicht, was es sein wird. Ich habe Annabelle Thomas getroffen, letzten Monat, wo ich war das. Und wir haben uns in Hamburg getroffen, haben viel geredet, viel getrunken vor allem. Das war sehr, sehr schön. Ich werde euch ein paar schöne Geschichten da von dem Abend erzählen. Es war ganz hervorragend mit Annabelle und wie hieß sie denn noch? Amber. Genau, das war ein schöner Abend. Und genau, wir werden Matt Hepburn aber zu Gast haben, nicht Annabelle. Und er wird uns ganz viel erzählen über die Brennerei, ähnlich wie Chiara heute. Das war sehr, sehr schön. Vielen Dank dafür. Das Tasting Set ist schon bestellbar. Es ist noch nicht lieferbar, weil wir die Samples noch nicht da haben und ich noch nicht weiß, was wir kriegen. Ich vermute, es wird sowas sein von New Make über den Standard Neen plus ein Whisky, den es noch nicht gibt, plus ein Whisky, den es nicht mehr gibt. Das könnte ganz spannend werden, aber die Details dazu werden wir auf jeden Fall noch veröffentlichen. Ich freue mich also, wenn ihr uns demnächst wieder besucht und wenn ihr
commercial break ends now.
Und, genau. Wir haben nochmal von Bremen Experience. Thank you very much, Chiara. And can we see Raasay at some whiskey fairs in Germany? Maybe this year.
Good question.
Yeah, I mean, I've actually been in Germany twice this year. I was at the Village in Nuremberg and I was in Limburg as well, one of my favourite shows in the whole world. And I'll be back out in September with Kirsch. We're doing a tasting tour in July. Forgot about that. So we may be coming somewhere near where you are. I'm not sure of the route map yet.
Okay.
So July, September, and then either myself or someone else in November.
What is in September? It says a house fair?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So it's not a public event, it's just
either July or at the Bottle Market in Bremen.
Okay, then we will see you, Daniel. Maybe Daniel and I will come to the Kirsch Fair because it's in our city here in Bremen. So it's in the soccer stadium here from the local soccer club Werder Bremen. Ne? Laura kann es leider nicht mit. Das ist ganz schön. Laura is a big fan of Werder Bremen, which is the soccer club from here, and the fair is in the stadium. So, but she's not allowed to come.
Okay.
But she lives in the south in Koblenz. I don't know if you know it.
No.
Koblenz. Yeah, you don't have to know it. Aber Laura, organisier doch einfach eine. Mach doch mal eine. Und genau, also ich freue mich, wenn ihr wieder einschaltet am 6.7. Wenn ihr ein bisschen die Werbetrommel für uns rührt und anderen Leuten erzählt, wie gut euch das gefällt oder auch nicht, dann, es wäre doof, dann sagt lieber nichts. Chiara, thank you very much for
thank you.
Spending
Thank
your time.
you. Thanks for having me.
Have a very good evening. Und ihr zu Hause, bestellt ordentlich im Heimathaven Online-Shop. Bis bald. Vielen, vielen Dank. Und wenn ihr noch Fragen habt, schickt die einfach. Wir beantworten die auch im Nachgang. Macht's gut, Leute.